Welcome everyone to our first Cloud Online Meetup in 2015. Today with us is Patrick Holm from StackStorm and Richard Whitehead for Moogsoft. And today both are going to speak about automated remediation. But before we dive into that, let me provide you some logistics. So if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat window on the left-hand side of the web panel. The presentation and demo and the Q&A afterwards will take approximately 45 minutes. And the slides as well as the recorded session will be available within the next 48 hours so that you can share it with others or review. And with that, let me hand over to you guys, Patrick and Richard. Let's start maybe with a brief introductory round. Can you please tell about you and the companies you work for?
Yeah, no problem. Hi, this is Patrick Holm. I work for StackStorm. I'm a DevOps engineer there. What we specialize in is operations automation, so wiring together all events within your environment over to actions you can take to help better leverage your operational staff. Richard?
Hi all, yes, Richard Whitehead. I'm the Chief Evangelist at Moogsoft Inc., and we're basically a solution provider for the new era of IT, providing operations solution.
Great. All right. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to give a brief overview of StackStorm, and then I'm going to pass it on over to Richard, and he's going to give you an overview of what Moogsoft does, and then we're going to kick into a demo for you. So basically, as I said, StackStorm specializes in operations automation. We have created a platform to make it as simple as possible to wire together any events or situations in your environment into actions that you can take against your environment for those events or situations. So the top level use cases that we specialize in are CI and CD, facilitated troubleshooting, or full automatic remediation. We make it really easy to tie in with all of your existing scripts and tools, no matter where they come from, whether it's this logo wall down at the bottom or they're just homebrew scripts. They're very easy to tie into your environment. From the CI/CD perspective, we can build out the entire pipeline for you, or we can actually integrate with existing tools like Jenkins or things like that. Facilitated troubleshooting is a situation where you can kind of preload a number of diagnostic workflows and things like that into our system, and then you can use those to help provide a very rich context to staff during an outage or an incident, things like that. And then you can take that one step further into a full automatic remediation, so you can close the loop all the way from the initial incident or situation as Moogsoft generates, all the way through to the remediation at the end. Kind of a brief overview, 30,000-foot level of how it works. We have sensors that listen to your environment or can poll your environment, and then they wire into automations within our system. And those automations can then take action. On top of all of that, we wrap it all up with full audit, which helps with postmortems or compliance, things like that, which make those type of things a lot easier. One important point to note is that all these things are stored as infrastructure as code. And there's a lovely little architectural diagram for you so you can get a general idea of how we lay out our system. These are the different pieces that are comprised, and so in a flow of how it works. So that's kind of a real high-level, brief overview of what StackStorm does and how we do it. What I'd like to do is I'd like to pass it on over to Richard, and he's going to go over the how Moogsoft does what they do.
Thanks a lot, Patrick. Okay, I have control. So I mentioned Moogsoft is providing the next generation IT operations solution, bringing that role and kicking and screaming into the 21st century, providing operations that is agile and flexible enough to meet the demands of the DevOps community. A little bit about the background of the company. Well funded, created a lot of interest, a lot of buzz, and we're currently in use by some extremely large web-scale organizations. So basically, when I mentioned we're challenging the workflow of today, historically when operations folks are dealing with large quantities of data, and I mean very large quantities of data in the operations environment, the triage process is pretty unstructured today. It's basically dealing with large volumes of data, trying to apply some kind of severity rank, and then knock off the most important issues as rapidly as possible. It's a very manual, very intensive process today, using a lot of tribal knowledge and personal experience, and just way too much manpower, or proof power, as this slide implies. So what's Moogsoft doing to try and fix this problem? Well, we're bringing the power of big data and analytics to the problem, using sophisticated algorithms to reduce the volume of data, bring it down to manageable quantities, and apply sophisticated clustering algorithms to look for patterns and relationships in the data. So essentially what the operators are presented with is a manageable to-do list. And we're using some pretty up-to-date social collaboration technology to allow the interested parties and the stakeholders to caucus together and resolve issues essentially in a virtual war room. The net result is we've compressed the timeline from identifying essentially machine data alerts, processing them and presenting them to operators in terms of actionable data. And what that's done, what's essentially provided, is a really authentic situation within your environment, as opposed to discrete alerts that is telling you something might be happening or flashing lights. It's an authentic situation, and that really links well into external solutions such as service management solutions or runbook automation solutions, and that's the reason we're here today talking with StackStorm. And I took the liberty of producing a slide that shows the integration that we're going to be demonstrating in a few minutes. What we have here is a large quantity of potential event sources. It could be from Docker right through to any number of applications that are capable of generating any kind of information that might pertain to a potential situation in your environment. So it could be monitoring web services, it could be monitoring application performance, and as applications are pushed out and new containers are created, things might go wrong. And what our system will attempt to do is look at this stream of data coming in and essentially correlate and cluster that information into a situation in real time, so it unfolds, and the operators can say, hey, something's happening, and you can basically query the narrative and say, looks like there might be a problem in a particular area. It's clustered change-related events and so forth. So it really streamlines the diagnostic process. Like I said, presents a very small number of situations that correlate very nicely to an actual issue in the infrastructure. And we're pretty creative as to what kind of information can be taken in. We even have users that are pulling in tweets with negative sentiment to determine whether or not an application that's being pushed out is affecting customers, and they can correlate that to the underlying infrastructure issues. In a DevOps environment, this is particularly useful because you can pull in the traditional infrastructure information such as network and issues, provider issues, and essentially separate code issues from underlying hardware and infrastructure issues. And what we're basically going to be doing today is demonstrating that you can identify some issues, present those to your team in this virtual war room, and then very quickly, based on what you're seeing in what we call a situation room, launch an action within StackStorm to go and either do some additional diagnostics for you. That's the use case we'll be presenting today. We can also very quickly understand that could lead on to an automated remediation action, to launch an action. And there's some bidirectional integration, so when StackStorm runs off and works through its sequence of actions, that information can be fed back, and it produces a really nice flow of data and compresses that operations life cycle. So the end goal is to make life easier for operators. So that's the end of my preambles. Patrick, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. The one point I kind of would like to make here that I didn't touch on is that we at StackStorm expose APIs at all levels of our product, which made this integration here as simple as it is in the diagram. It was quite easy for Richard and I to build it out rather quickly.
That's a really good point, actually. In the diagram you're looking at here, there are 2 points of intersection that are of interest that we'll show in the demo. One is obviously at the data API level. We chose to integrate this using a thing we call a Moobot, and that allows us to intercept chat commands, and we're essentially launching this particular example as a chatbot type command, but also capturing the data and placing it into our product. And the integration, all the hooks that we provided for our Moobots are exposed in JavaScript, so very easy to implement, very rapid, and very standardized. The information flow between the two products is in JSON. At the higher user interface level, we're going to be showing StackStorm's user interface, which I understand is very fresh and new. And that level of integration is depicted by that line at the top, showing that we can basically pull up the user interface in context. So with that, I'm going to try and share the user interface.
Before we go into that, a question just popped in. Maybe Patrick, you can respond to that to the entire audience. Is it possible to use Moogsoft or root cause analysis and anomaly detection? If so, if yes, how is it different from Splunk?
I actually did, yeah, here, let me post it to all. I actually had replied directly to that user, but let me post it to all here.
Yeah, no, the point is that the recorded session, the chat will not be visible, so you'll need to respond to it verbally.
Yeah, no problem. There's definitely what's really important about this is Moogsoft does an incredible job of taking what could appear to be disparate events and correlating them into a really rich situation. And so they're able to take this correlation and generate this situation and then provide the context for the situation to StackStorm. StackStorm can then do a whole bunch more diagnostic and data collection things and actually performing actions against your infrastructure, against your environment to gather time-sensitive data in order to really help you with root cause analysis when you sit down to do your postmortem.
And I think one of the questions mentioned Splunk in particular, which is a particular favorite of mine. The big difference there in this instance is what Instant Moog, the Moogsoft product, is doing is capturing a flow of data in real time and applying algorithms using unsupervised machine learning with natural language processing capability to essentially process that information in real time as it flows in to identify patterns and relationships and things that are happening in the data. So it's not so much a query process. We're not indexing the data per se. We're basically handling it in real time and presenting it to operators to basically show a situation as it unfolds in real time. Okay, with that, I'm going to try and switch over to the application. Okay. I don't know what I'm seeing right now. Can anybody give me some confirmation, Patrick?
There's a gray screen right now is what I see.
Okay.
Yeah, see the same now.
Okay. So that didn't work.
Yeah, I see a gray screen with two little chat things at the top.
Okay, let's try that again. Okay, now I'm trying to share my desktop. What are we seeing now?
Yes, we see clean all the alerts.
Okay, I'll do that one then. Hold on one second.
There we go.
Okay. Right. Success. So basically what we're looking at now is the situation queue. And as I mentioned, the situation is an algorithmically derived grouping of associated alerts. And there's one that I'm dealing with right now. You can see at the top there, situation 24. We have a problem that's occurred. There's something to about 8 alerts that have been correlated here. And I've already started working on this. So I'm going to go into the situation room, and you can see how far I've got so far. Okay. I'm running into some desktop impression issues here right now. Okay, and I've already started working on this, and I've determined, based on the alerts that have come into the situation, that we're seeing some CPU load alerts. So that seems to be the problem. Some of the other issues, knock-on issues, might be related to that. So in this particular example, we're going to show a diagnostic workflow. So I'm going to use StackStorm to try and reduce the number of individual discrete tasks I would do at this point to try and debug this problem. And I'm going to try and figure out, well, perhaps what would be causing the CPU issues in server 3. So I'm actually going to launch this from our chat environment. I'm going to ask our bot okay. So I'm going to ask the Moobot to launch essentially a StackStorm action. In this instance, in the spirit of ChatOps, we've abbreviated the command line that you would use for StackStorm to something that's tailored specifically for this use case. So we're going to run a diagnostic action, load average, against server 3. And in our application, what we're going to do is journal the fact that I ran that command. Again, in the spirit of ChatOps, everything's monitored and journaled. And oh, here we go. Excellent. So the chatbots responded and confirmed that we've launched a StackStorm action. And it's returned an ID number that we can use for a number of purposes going forward. Just close out of that and see if we've actually done that. I'll speed things up by refreshing. So we can see now here in the situation, we've just added the fact that this particular action has been executed, and there's a reference number that we can use. Go back into our situation room. And please bear with me, because this is not the screen that I would normally be used for showing this. See if I can shrink that down. Okay. Because a StackStorm action has been executed, you can see there's just peeking out here at the bottom of the screen. Because it's been executed, we can, that doesn't help either. We can click on this particular tab, and within our application, just bring up the StackStorm user interface in context, and we can see that in fact, as the response indicated, the StackStorm action has been scheduled. I can click on that and see the results. In this particular instance, it succeeded, and I can run through and read the various output and results from that. There's a couple of other hooks too. If we can go and view that full screen by clicking on that link there, and there we go. You can see it in a little bit more detail. So what that's basically doing In this particular instance, because the StackStorm action is actually a composite of possible tools and things that I would normally run as part of my normal process of trying to debug a load issue on a server, that's made it one particular action. And given that we understand that a situation may reoccur, it's possible within our application to create a situation template that says, in the future, when we see a situation like this that looks very, very similar, that contains very similar alerts, perhaps it contains CPU high type alerts or whatever keyword that might trigger that, we can create an automated action to run that diagnosis process in the background. So when the problem occurs and the operator goes into the situation for the first time, the result of these actions may already be there waiting for him. So very time-saving. And if you think about it, you can obviously follow the logical conclusion here and say, well, if you can run a troubleshooting automation, given that you have the authenticity and confidence in a situation, plus the hooks and automations and confidence in the automation actions, why wouldn't you build automated lights-out remediation workflows here, which we think is the purpose and the goal of this demonstration. Very simple demonstration, so that's it.
Yeah. Good job, Richard. Thank you very much. Yeah, I feel this is a really powerful integration because on the StackStorm side, it's very, very easy to create these workflows that will go do diagnostic work or remediation work or whatever it is that you need. And by tying this into a situation within Moogsoft, you can very easily give operators access to do those things with what we like to refer to as preloaded expertise. So, you could have network engineers and DBAs and all those specialties, all those SMEs, preload their expertise into the system as StackStorm actions and workflows, and then give, using a context menu or using the chat room bot through the Moogsoft platform, give all of the operators the ability to run those things and gather all of the necessary data or potentially resolve the issue as needed. You could, in theory, have these incidents directly tied to the situations and have them run automatically even too.
Yeah, I think the potential obviously is far greater than even the initial indication would show. But one of the examples would be if you look at the way that our application looks at the situation in terms of how it unfolds over time. We have the opportunity when selecting the situation, for example, to provide feedback by applying a priority template with a similarity. So we use an algorithm to determine when alerts and problems occur and flow into the system. We can look at the patterns and the relationships and say, well, as a situation unfolds, when it reaches a certain similarity coefficient, maybe we can trigger an action, and that action could be a StackStorm action that goes and digs in and finds more information. And that's really powerful because it gives the system the ability to be preemptive in identifying issues. So you don't have to wait until the logical conclusion of a problem where things actually fail. You can use this as a stimulus to say, okay, it looks like something might be happening, perhaps based on something we've seen in the past. Do we want to, at this early stage, maybe trigger some additional diagnostic information, populate the situation with that information, and allow operators to make an informed decision very early on in the problem lifecycle? So in practical terms, in an operations environment, we're finding this is compressing the mean time to resolution dramatically.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. I think, Richard, did you have anything else that you wanted to demo here?
I think that's we've covered the most important and salient parts of the integration here.
Okay, good. Yeah. Go ahead.
One question or a misunderstanding that just came in via chat from David. I think I missed something here. The StackStorm action was to run a load average, but the output looked like code, so I don't see the relationship between the action and the output.
So yeah, I can address that. So actually what was run was within the StackStorm platform, we have the concept of actions and workflows. And so there was a workflow that was called, it's abbreviated, but it's a load average diagnostic workflow. And so what that diagnostic load average workflow does is it actually goes and it looks at the system that reported the high load. Can you click the actions button at the top, Richard? And then in the filter type diag, there's a little filter at the top. Top of there. DIAG. Okay. Okay, and then click on that. And then click on the code tab on the upper right. So this is what a workflow looks like within the StackStorm platform. And so this particular workflow gets fired off from within the Moogsoft platform when there is this high CPU load alert. And what it does is it goes out to the server that's having the high load alert, and it checks the load average. It looks for processes that are in an uninterruptible sleep. It looks for processes that are currently running. It looks at open network sockets. It looks at open file handles, a few other things like that, and can report that data back if any of that exists. But if none of that is, if there's none of those things running at the moment, then it doesn't report them back. So this is just a very simple diagnostic workflow. So what you would get if this was a true ongoing incident and the system was really loaded is what you would actually get all of that data spit back to you in the embedded window that you saw from the Moogsoft platform. That's kind of the beauty of the StackStorm platform, is that we allow you to create really simple scripts or use existing tools or integrations that you have and tie those together into a workflow that can be used for, you know, deployment purposes or for troubleshooting purposes. Specifically today we're talking about facilitated troubleshooting or eventually full remediation. But this one is facilitated troubleshooting. So you can take that workflow and just fire that off and collect all of the data that you need for that incident.
And every one of these actions has the capability of returning, obviously, a success or failure, and that's something that can be integrated into the status of the situation. So obviously you can see we have the typical user affordances that would indicate severity. So if you have a situation that perhaps is related to, I don't know, disk allocation, and the action that you would take would be to perhaps first determine whether or not the disk is just simply filled up, maybe flushing out some unused files would restore the issue. If that's not the case, then perhaps what you might need to do is actually reallocate additional disk space dynamically. So that would be another example of a runbook type action that StackStorm would take. And obviously you would be, because this is lights out, you'll be looking for some kind of return value that says, did it work or didn't it? And that value would be indicated here on the operational screen. Perhaps if it was all good and it worked, we could close out the situation, or at the very least colorize it green. Very flexible workflows.
So there's another question that just came in. Richard says, can you export histories for other tools to analyze, in what standard format? From the StackStorm side, from the action execution side, yes. All of the actions that are run and all of that information that's done is logged, and we do provide a standard log format that you can consume via Logstash or Splunk or whatever your log utility is, or you can even take those and pump them back into Moogsoft if that's what you want to do. On the Moogsoft side, Richard, can you answer that question?
Yes, there's two answers to that question. Generally, the philosophy of Moogsoft is to capture and recycle and reuse everything. But the caveat to that is it may in some cases be metadata. We're processing vast quantities of logs. In some cases, in some sites, we're dealing with billions of stimulus events. So you may not want to store all of the original source events that come in. That's basically landfill. However, you do want to capture all the intelligence. So everything you've seen in this process, every action that's been taken, you'll see that when I ran that chat up command and launched the StackStorm action, that was journaled in multiple potentially multiple threads. It could be pushed out to a customer-facing thread or purely stored internally. All of that information is persisted and can be reported on. So we believe it's important. So all the chat room information is stored and is text searchable. I think I mentioned that we have the ability to look for repeating situations and take actions based on that, so you can intelligently add information. Again, that information is stored, and we have people running reports to look for recurring situations within a given similarity over a certain period of time. So it's a way of identifying whether you have a sort of systemic issue that needs to be resolved by engineering rather than just a random operational issue.
Yeah, one really great use case could be the StackStorm platform itself has the ability to run actions based off of any incoming events. Right now we're showing incoming events from Moogsoft or even based off of timer events, but you could turn around and have the output of any StackStorm actions that are running, the results of that, the logs, pumped directly back into Moogsoft to help increase the richness of the context of their situations.
Yeah, that's the good point, Patrick. That's the power of natural language processing. So our algorithms are basically working off the content of the stimulus messages, the log entries. It could be log4j, debug, whatever, Twitter messages, one example. And we're looking for natural language patterns. So essentially, the more information you feed in, the more enrichment you generate, the more the algorithms have to get their teeth into and look for patterns and relationships. So very powerful.
So another question came in. So can actions be any executable code, e.g. C++, Python, Java? Can you capture its output and process it? So the answer for StackStorm is yes. We can. Our remote execution environment is purely based off of, our remote executions are purely based off of what the remote host can handle. So as long as the remote host can handle the script that you've written, we copy it out there and we run it. So if it basically looks at the shebang. So if you have a Python script or a Ruby script or anything like that, we will copy out the bits for that script and then we will run it on the remote host. The assumption is that any prerequisites are there, obviously. You can't run a Ruby script on a server that doesn't have Ruby installed. But yes, you could run pretty much anything like that. And capturing the output and processing it, yes, we capture all of the output from all of the actions that are run in a structured data format. And then we're able to pass that between actions within the workflow or report that back at the end of it. And the users can do what they will with that at that point.
Another question that came in, any plans to integrate StackStorm with Murano?
So I don't currently have that on my roadmap, so that's a tough one for me to answer. But if that's something that people are interested in, I would love to hear about it. And if you can either email us directly, support@stackstorm.com, or you can contact us over IRC on Freenode #StackStorm, and I'd love to hear about that, and I'd love to chat it out.
All right. Unless there are no any further questions, so we'll end the session. So let's wait another few minutes. Maybe a few more questions will pour in. So it looks like you guys answered all the questions.